You watch 100 Mile Drive, a channel where I teach you to buy the right car. And guys, today I brought 2024 BMW X3 30i xDrive to answer the biggest question many of you are asking. What is the right car to get? Is it this X3 30i with a smaller 4-cylinder engine and 248 horsepower? Or is it its bigger brother, BMW X3 M40i, a car I personally have that has an inline 6-cylinder legendary B58 engine with 382 horsepower. Well, by the end of this video, I'm gonna tell you the main differences between both of these cars in terms of driving dynamics and what is the right car for you. I was loaned this X3 30i by BMW Bob Smith, so I dropped off my X3 M40i for a sunroof rattle repair. This is an attempt number 4. So if you want to follow along that story, as I'm going to be making a special video just talking about that sunroof rattle repair and whether it's finally got fixed or not, then make sure to subscribe to this channel if you don't want to miss that video. And first I'm going to drive X3 30i in the city to really discuss what is it like driving this car over LA imperfected roads compared to my X3 M40i. Then I'm going to jump on the highway to really talk about its comfort and sound insulation. And finally, I'm going to take you to the twisty roads to really see what is it like driving this car, what is its steering, suspension like compared to more aggressive X3 M40i. And finally, I'm going to jump into my X3 40i to give my final verdict on both of these cars. And first, a quick walk around this 2024 X3 30i just to quickly discuss what this non-M Sport trim looks like. Personally, not a huge fan. I really don't like these chrome finishes here on bumpers and all around. I really like the M Sport, and this is why BMW wants you to spend extra 2,000 plus on all their models, so in some cases even higher, just so that the car looks beefier with better wheels, you know, blacked out all this chrome places. So in my opinion, it's totally worth spending extra money for the M Sport package. Now, if you're curious about this wheels and tire package, well, these are non-staggered 245 50 R19 run flats. If you follow my channel, I'm a huge critic of the run flat tires, but I'll discuss how they feel on this base X3. Side profile overall looks fine. I kind of like the rear. I think these tail lights look fantastic. Again, I don't like this chrome finish here on the bumper. It should be blacked out to make it look more aggressive. So overall, this X3 looks nice. Does it look dated? Maybe slightly, but I don't want them to mess it up, you know, in the upcoming model. Let's do a quick door sound check. Sounds exactly the same. It's a pretty heavy door, and that's what I like about BMWs. Let's get on the inside. Now, on the inside, there are not really many differences for this base X3 compared to the X3 M40i. One thing I wanted to point out, these seats, somehow this base Sensotech seats feel slightly more cushioned than in our X3 M40i. I am pretty surprised, and my wife said exact same thing. I don't know if there is a difference between both cars or it's just some build of, you know, individual cars that some feel slightly softer and some feel, you know, slightly harder. Not sure. As far as the quality of material, it's exactly the same between both of these cars. I love the upper trims. This mid piece is soft. My only complaint is this lower plastic. This scratches very easily and it does feel kind of cheap. I wish they would improve this lower panel. Now, everything else is pretty much the same. Now, this car does not have a head-up display. This is what it looks like. This is a soft touch material. Another difference between X3 30i and M40i is our car has a stitching here in the middle. I was quite surprised to see that there is a difference. Now, as far as the smaller screen, this car has a smaller screen. I highly recommend you upgrade to the premium package so you get this bigger screen that feels much nicer, especially when you use Apple or CarPlay or Android Auto. Also, highly recommend you upgrade to the Harman Kardon system. This does not have, even this base audio system sounds okay, but Harman Kardon is highly recommended. That's in my personal experience. This also has a base non-M Sport steering. Don't like these chrome finishes, but you know, they come in most BMWs. Love the M Sport steering, which is a thicker, you know, steering wheel. So this is also okay. But again, I highly recommend you get the M Sport trim, that it just feels nicer overall. Now, everything else is the same. Quality materials are pretty much the same. This car does not have a wireless charging. It's a $500 option. My phone, I complained that it's charging slow, but many of you reported in some of my videos that your phones are charging fast. So I guess I do recommend you getting that as well. So this area is kind of not a waste, I guess. Yep, so this is it. Now let's go ahead and drive it. And guys, if you find this video long, make sure to utilize chapters in this video. And first I'm gonna drive X330i in this city. So I'm gonna put it in Sport Plus mode for now. And we're all set, no cars, let's go. All right, just to kind of get a feel for acceleration, nothing crazy, just to get an idea, right? How does this X330i drive? Now this car is rated 0 to 60 in about 6 seconds, and it does feel adequate. It feels fairly quick, fairly responsive. Part of this deal is the ZF transmission that it has, which feels really quick. It has very quick shifts. You have decent power, you know, in your mid acceleration. So this car does feel great. Now we're coming to the stop. Let's do a quick stop as well to see the brakes. All right, stop. Nice. And then let's do a quick acceleration. Yeah, quick shifts. So overall it feels good. I like this. Now X3 M40i, of course, is the car that sounds much louder. It's more dramatic, and it just revs, you know, it just rips through the acceleration. It goes really fast. It has a 4.4 seconds. This car is designed more for comfort. It is athletic. It has that athletic BMW signature, but yet it has that language where it's built for comfort. Now another stop right here. Now stop pedal is gradual, it's more linear. In X3 M40i, brakes are really strong. They just stop really aggressively. So this car has a much more gradual kind of linear brakes. All right, let's accelerate. I'm in Sport Individual now. Yeah, there is some amplifying sound, you know, for the engine, but overall it doesn't sound bad, but of course not as good as X3 M40i. Now, one thing when you brake, there is a little lean forward, another leaning here in the corners, but we're gonna talk about this on the twisty roads. So overall, I can see how suspension is more comfortable. And we're gonna talk about suspension right now, by the way, in a bit on our bumpy roads. Another stop, and the car kind of leans forward a little more than I kind of want it to, but it still does it very confidently. The X3 M40i, like I said, the brakes are so good in that car. Sometimes when you brake kind of quickly, it stops like crazy. I mean, I can't even describe how good the brakes are in the X3 M40i. They are larger M Sport brakes. Now, next, let's talk about steering in this X3, base X3. It is good, it's quite direct. One thing, it's lighter. It's noticeably lighter in this car compared to the X3 M40i, where steering is heavier. Not heavy, it's heavier, even in its Eco Pro and Comfort mode. Here, it's very light, so this car is very easy to drive. So I would say most people buying this car because they want this BMW DNA, which is basically really good steering, very balanced suspension. What really gets you with X3 compared to, let's say, Audi or Mercedes is that even being comfortable, they do it in that athletic way, which makes you feel good driving this car. So this car is good for both passenger and the driver overall. Yes, it's not as aggressive as X3 M40i, and we'll again talk about on the canyon roads what are the biggest, let's say, you know, differences between this car and that when you actually put it to a little more to the stress. But other than that, if you're just daily driving a car, let's say you're not into fast accelerations, you're not into, you know, taking aggressive corners, then this is pretty much all you really need, because this car does deliver. Now let's next talk about the suspension. Let me go ahead and drive it on the bumpy roads. By the way, I'm driving behind the X4 xDrive 30i. And what do you guys think? Do you really like that coupe-like shape of this crossover, or do you like the X3? Let me know what you think in the comments. And now driving X3 30i over imperfected road, my favorite, Tampa Avenue. So this X3 30i definitely has a much more relaxed suspension. Oh, there's somebody approaching. All right, let's let them go. So the suspension is definitely more on the relaxed side compared to the X3 M40i. So it has a longer travel springs, where in X3 M40i, all the movements are kind of shorter. So the X3 M40i is slightly bouncier, but it bounces in a shorter way. This car also has a little bouncy kind of feel, which is very nice. It feels really good, but it soaks the bumps and imperfections so well. Not as good as X5. X5 is a larger car. It's even more relaxed. This one feels more athletic than X5, but at the same time, it's so much more comfortable than X3 M40i. Well, not a lot more comfortable, but definitely noticeably comfortable. The X3 M40i, with its shorter travel suspension, like I said, it bounces a little more, and when you hit a lot of imperfections, you kind of feel like it's a firmer car, it's a sportier car. And then some of you might like it, I'm okay with that, but some of you may not like it. Now, I am in my local neighborhoods. So what is it like driving this X3 in day to day? Very pleasant, very pleasant. Like I said, it's more on the comfort side, yet it has this sporty characteristic where you feel you are behind the wheel of a BMW. This is not Audi, this is not Lexus, this is not a Mercedes. Those cars will probably feel even more comfortable, but they will not have this, agile chassis, that athletic chassis that we're gonna discuss again on the twisty roads, where BMW really will outperform those vehicles. The only car that really compares is the Porsche Macan, maybe Hyundai Genesis that I'll bring on the channel. Porsche Macan, one thing about that car is I have made a video on that. It's a bit boring when you just drive it on the streets. It feels like a Volkswagen to me, like Audi. But when you throw Macan into the corners, when you drive it more aggressively, that PDK dual clutch really shows its athletic character. Whereas BMW, it's kind of fun to drive this car even when you're not doing anything. The whole feel of this chassis is really good. It's very pleasant. So there you have it. This is what it is like driving this base X3. Really good brakes, very linear, decent acceleration, very good stable chassis, very nicely tuned suspension. It all translates to a very pleasant experience, and this is why most of you are buying this base X3. Now, when it comes to X3 M40i, well, this is what I'm gonna talk about when I jump into that car. Now, let's go ahead and drive this car on the highway. And I'm about to merge the highway, hitting more of these imperfected roads, and I'm really enjoying how it soaks the bumps. It's not as good as X5. X5 really does it even better job, but it's fairly well. So if you don't have, let's say, kids, if you're, if you like more spirited, more athletic driving, then I highly recommend X3 because it's roomy enough and it's a fairly good car. But of course, if you want even more comfort, you want more room, then that's where X5 comes. And especially if you have a bigger family, then X5 will be a better car to get. All right, let's go. I'm in Sport Individual. Yeah, of course, this car is not as fast as the X3 M40i that just jumps on the freeway, but it has decent power. It's pretty pleasant how it's delivered. I really like how this power is delivered here. You don't feel, like a major turbo lag, like even in mid-range power. Let's say let me put it in comfort mode. This is what you guys are gonna mostly be driving it at. And now let's say go. Yeah, in comfort mode, of course, there's a higher delay. If we want to test those things, we want to be in a sport mode. But overall, it does pretty well. You want to change lane, you just go and yes, it has to downshift like 2 gears and then it moves, but it does it pretty well, pretty comfortably. All right, so the first thing, now let's talk about the sound insulation in this cabin. Let's look at my meter. Let's go a little higher, 65. It's about 63. It's about 63. So sound insulation is pretty good. I know some of you guys complained when I made videos about my X3 M40i that you hear some excessive wind noise around the cabin, especially around the windshield area. For some reason, I never found any of those issues. I've been driving, quite a few X3s overall, like not just on my channel. And I don't hear anything excessive, anything that I would point out. I would definitely point it out if I found something. So this car feels pretty good for the class. Of course, cars like X5, which is a higher class, will have even better sound insulation. Now, what about the run flat tires, right? Let's quickly talk about run flat tires. So one thing about run flats is that I criticize them on my car because of adaptive M suspension, a short travel suspension, where it creates that jitterness. Like on the freeway, run flat tires, especially for the passengers in X3 M40i, might create that vibration that they'll feel in their, let's say, thighs or their legs, okay? Not something you're gonna see on a regular dealership test drive, believe me. In the city, run flats have the harsher impact when you hit the dips, certain potholes or certain things. You will feel that for sure. Now, in this base X3, run flat tires feel good, okay? It's the same Bridgestone run flats, very similar tires. Even the impact with the road, I don't know if they made better run flats now. I know there's the third generation of run flats, which are even better than the first and second gen, but even the impact with the road in this car did not feel bad at all. And especially with a comfortable, more softer suspension, I think run flats here almost are not noticeable. So in this particular car, I do not criticize run flat tires. I think you could totally leave these tires on, and have that extra protection in case if you get a, punctured tire. And the last two things I want to discuss. One, is it good for long distance driving? Absolutely, absolutely. How is it different than X3 M40i? Honestly, they're about the same because highway driving is usually a very smooth road, unless it's a 405 freeway, of course. But overall, usually a smooth road, smooth surface, and both cars will feel about the same. Of course, the M40i will be slightly bouncier, but on the highway, that's the place where it does least of its bouncing. So both cars will feel the same. It's the city where they feel different, and of course, twisty roads where I'm going right now. Now, what about the mid-range power? Again, so if you're going a little faster, you need to overtake cars, you might be putting your car in a regular, let's say, sport mode. I wouldn't drive in the Sport Plus because the transmission will be whining and it's just not pleasant, unless we're gonna go to twisty roads and test it there. But let's see here, let's say go. Yeah, it has adequate power. It has adequate power. I can tell it's a 4-cylinder. Yes, it could be faster, but it doesn't have to be. It's pretty decent for what it is. It pairs very nice with this ZF transmission, like I already pointed out. So mid-range power is fairly good. All right, now let's go ahead and drive this car on the twisty roads. And now driving X330i on the twisty roads. Let's go. I am in Sport Plus. I have my sport display on. Now, if you're watching for the first time my channel, the reason I bring cars on twisty roads pretty much in all my dynamic drive reviews, to look at their safety, stability. Basically, when we're driving car on the twisty roads, that's where we put everything a little bit more to the stress, like the brakes, acceleration, most importantly suspension, and that's where we get to see what is this car made of. Like whenever I rent a car and if I don't drive it on twisty roads, not for the channel, like in general, I have no idea how would the car like this behave, or any car, let's say in a dangerous situation. Let's say if somebody brakes in front of you, how it would behave, how its chassis would behave. All right, let's take some corners. We're not really going fast, just to get an idea of this X330i. Now, one thing immediately different compared to the X3 M40i is, of course, suspension, the chassis, right? And this car leans more in the corner because it's more comfortable. Suspension kind of bounces a little higher and lower, like it moves on its platform a little bit more than the X3 M40i that has a shorter travel suspension, so it's very quick. It doesn't go up and down that much. So on these kind of I would not say bad roads, but not perfect roads, the chassis kind of bounces more. It leans definitely a lot more. So obviously, you know, X3 M40i will take these corners at the faster speed, and it'll give you even more confidence. But nevertheless, even for a base X3, this car feels great. So what happens is it leans into the corner and then it holds there. Chassis will hold there really well. So even though, you know, we have a comfortable suspension, let's take this corner a little bit faster, it will still hold really well. Yeah, and the chassis stays connected. I know exactly what the car doing. There'll be some understeer, but it's in a very controlled environment. There's nothing funky going on. Now, another thing that limits this car is the tires. If we could have BMW's, you know, staggered tires, like wider, you know, M Sport on the wider in the rear, we will be able to hold in the corners a little bit better. But nevertheless, this is a lot of fun. Like, you guys can have fun even in the base X3 on your back roads, because the car knows exactly what it's doing. It knows, you know, it knows twisty roads. BMW is designed to take twisty roads. That's where this car is so different than your Audi, your Lexus, not the Macan. Macan does everything completely different. How it does it, make sure to watch that video. I have it on the channel. So X3 M40i will be a lot more aggressive through the corners because of its shorter suspension. The steering also lighter here. It's not a downer at all. I mean, you can steer just fine. It's just an X3 M40i that feedback is a little bit more from the steering, even though it's electromechanical steering. So overall, I like how this car feels. The athletic character of BMW unpacks right here on the twisty roads, not in the city, not on the highway. You can feel it there as well, but the full unpack can be done on the twisty roads, and that's where you understand why you are buying BMW over its competition. So I hope you found some value. Now, next I'm gonna jump into my X3 M40i, drive the car, and then give you my final verdict on both of these cars. Alright guys, and I picked up my BMW X3 M40i from the dealership for sunroof rattle repair, which I'm going to discuss in a separate video. Now I just want to talk about how this X3 M40i really different than X3 30i. And first I just wanted to show you the difference between the base trim X3 30i and the actual M Sport package. I mean, you can spec X3 30i with M Sport as well, and it'll look pretty much the same. Look how more aggressive this bumper is. Really looks nice. No that chrome, unless you're a big fan of chrome finishing. Otherwise, everything is blacked out on this car. This has upgraded 20-inch wheels, the M Sport brakes. Obviously, you can get that on X3 30i as well. All blacked out, like I said. And look, the rear looks much nicer, right? These pieces are blacked out here, so the bumper looks kind of more sleek, I would say. So definitely like this more. Now let's get on the inside. And I also wanted to show you on the inside how this car really looks different than the other one. Not too much, a little bit different. Now this has a camo interior. These Sensatec seats are the same as the other car, but somehow they feel a little bit firmer in this car. Not sure why. Now, see how the contrast of these colors, black and this camo, make this car look really nicer, in my opinion. It is subjective. Maybe you like black on black. This has a carbon fiber trim as well. This also has an M Sport steering wheel. You can get that on X3 30i, and I really like it. It's thicker, just feels more sport oriented. Let me get on the inside. What else? Harman Kardon stereo system, highly recommended. This definitely sounds better. There's more surround sound with this. So if you like listening to music, definitely get Harman Kardon. It comes with a premium package. Sometimes you can get it by itself. This also, like I said, has a premium package, so it has a bigger screen, which is much nicer than the other one. I mean, it's not a deal breaker, but if you can get it, why not, you know, get it? Like, pay a little extra and your maps will look bigger. Your CarPlay will look a little bit bigger. So when I jumped from that car into this car, I definitely like that it has this option. Now, also it has a head-up display. Again, part of, I believe, premium package. And I first didn't like it. I even found it a little bit annoying. Also, your windshield replacement will be more expensive if you have this option, but now I like it actually. I like that it shows me speed limit on all the streets, and of course your navigation will be much cooler because it'll show you on the screen as well. And see how this has a stitching here? I didn't know this until I really saw two cars back to back. The other one did not have this. Again, carbon fiber trim. So overall, I like this camel interior over the black one. Again, just personally my opinion. Everything else is exactly the same. And of course, with M Sport trim, you have a lot of M badges throughout the interior, literally in like many places. All right, enough of this. Let's go ahead and drive it and see how they are really different. All right, guys, and now I'm gonna go for a quick drive just to discuss the differences in terms of how they feel to drive. So I'm gonna put it in sport mode. All right, nobody's there. Let's go. And let's discuss this. The first thing I want to talk about is, of course, the engine, right? This car has B58 legendary engine that has a 382 horsepower, 367 pound-feet of torque. How does that translate in terms of the feel to drive? Well, of course, X3 M40i comes standard also with all-wheel drive. That means this car just jumps. It literally jumps from the start. Now, even if you drive it in comfort mode, this car is very quick. And if you're not easy with your throttle, you'll feel those quick, like, you know, pushes forward, like it just lunges. Whereas, of course, X330i has a more linear power. That B48 four-cylinder engine is fairly quick as well, but it's not as aggressive as this one. So I'm gonna put it in Sport Plus, and let's go. All right, I'm not gonna go fast, just to do a quick lunge. Of course, the video doesn't do any justice what this car is capable of. Now, in Sport Plus mode, it'll do very aggressive shifts, upshifts, downshifts, like everything is amplified. B48 has exact same transmission, but everything is kind of toned down, you know? So when you drive this car, you hear everything louder, everything just, even the same shifts of ZF transmissions, they're just so much more satisfying. So let me do a quick more lunge. And when the car shifts, you get a quick, like, you know, jerk, like in the car. I mean, it's a cool thing, right? It's a satisfying thing that every shift you kind of feel it. All right, I'm gonna throw it back into sport mode. So basically, as you realize, the whole satisfaction by driving this car, especially in sport, like I typically drive it in sport individual mode, where I keep suspension and my steering in basically comfort, my engine in sport mode, transmission in sport mode, not Sport Plus, it also has Sport Plus. So it gives me that very nice balance of comfort and performance, where transmission doesn't rev too much, because I don't want this all the time, right? I only do this if I am on the twisty roads, and I put it in Sport Plus. Otherwise, that sport individual mode gives me that really satisfying balance between comfort and, you know, hearing this engine growl. Even when you drive this car in Eco Pro mode, right, which is our most efficient mode, and when you drive it slowly, you hear a little bit of like the engine, you still hear it. So love that, love that. And when you drive it in sport individual mode, you hear that even like it opens up, you know, the thing opens up and you just hear it a little more. Even when you're just not even flooring it, you're just driving it normal. So if you're a person who wants all this, you know, because the engine is the biggest part of this car, if you want all this performance, if you want that engine sound, let's not forget this car since 2020 was even down in terms of the sound. The 2018, 19, those were even louder. You have an option to reduce the engine sound. Let's say if your spouse doesn't want that, right? You can set the engine to reduce the engine sound. It'll be even quieter than it is. But nevertheless, you know, this is all about performance. Now, the next biggest thing is steering. Steering is heavier. Now, I'm in Eco Pro mode, and it's still gonna be heavier than driving X330i. So it's slightly heavier, sportier steering. It will feel also a little bit more direct than an X330i. The other thing, the biggest thing is suspension in this car. Let me go back in my favorite sport individual mode. Suspension is firmer. This is the biggest compromise, I would say. So if you are in the comfort, let me actually go ahead and drive it on my favorite Tampa Avenue so I can discuss how it soaks the bumps. And now driving on my favorite Tampa Avenue that I use for dynamic drives, which is basically a beat up road with a lot of imperfections, just to talk about the suspension. So X3 M40i has a shorter travel suspension. It's sportier. But how does that translate into the feel? So it's a little bit more bouncier. You feel it's a little bit more bouncier, but still it does pretty good job to kind of glide and, over these bumps and imperfections. When you hit something bigger, a pothole or a bigger bump, that move up and down will be quicker than X330i because it's a sport suspension. So some of it is not gonna feel as pleasant. The other problem with this car is that if you pick up one of these from the dealership, they're gonna come most likely 90% of the time with run flat tires, and those even make this experience worse. I made a separate video on run flat tires. It got very popular on my channel. So if you wanna watch about that, go ahead and watch about that, because I talk about the differences between driving it on run flats, and now this car has a all-season Michelin Pilot Sport tires, which are absolutely amazing. The contact with the road is much softer. That extra noise went away that the run flat tires create. The only times I would consider run flat tire is if it's a Generation 4 run flat tire, which is designed by Hankook, and now there are other makers getting into it. That's where the run flat tire feels, it is basically softer. The reinforced sidewall is a little smaller in that tire, and it feels like a regular tire, yet it still gives you that protection against the flats, right? So you can still drive on a completely flat tire. But for this car is set up for performance. I mean, and regular tires, these ones are Continentals, they'll do really well. I mean, this car feels so much better. Your performance is not sacrificed. You can put summer tires. I put all season so I can take it to snow, but you can put summer and it still does really good in terms of cornering. It is not like wobbly or bouncy. It just does absolutely great. So here's the biggest compromise, like I said, is comfort over sport. So if you're someone who can deal with this, if you're someone who is okay with this, and this is why I say go ahead and rent a car like this for a day and drive it, spend a day with it. That's why I drive them on different surfaces, city, highway, and twisty roads, because you see the difference between this car and that. Now, I'm not gonna take this car on twisty roads. I've made a ton of videos. Just go to my playlist for this car and you can find many videos of me driving it on the twisty roads. I drove it against X5, BMW iX, and I discussed how this car is so different. It's more aggressive, it's flatter through the corner, it can carry a lot more speed, feels more satisfying, feels more connected. Brakes, M Sport brakes, just great, okay? The one thing, when you even brake a little bit, the car they just clamp. The car just stops so aggressively. In some cases, not even pleasant. In X330i, everything is more gradual. Like when you brake, it is confident, but it's still more lenient. Here you brake and the car just stops. So you have to be a little bit easier on the brake. And of course, you learn this and it's not a problem. But I love the brakes here because they really give you that sense of confidence that you are ready for any emergency situation. So there you have it, guys. This is just a quick feel on how this car feels compared to X330i. If you want this sport, if you want more power, and without much compromise, because this car has a mild hybrid system that allows it to, cruise at speeds up to 90 miles per hour, where it shuts the engine down. So your overall miles per gallon figures are not that much different. They're really only 1 miles per gallon on average less than the X330i, yet you're getting such a, more powerful car. In terms of price, if you guys, out there shopping, I was able to get 10% off MSRP, plus I get Ultimate Driving Event coupon, $1,000 off. So there are ways you can stack up the savings. Then the difference between X330i and X3 M40i is like 5,000, maybe 6,000. Because X330i is a more available car, and they're not bargaining it as much, as they know more people buy them. So it depends. It really depends on the dealership, your state, a lot of factors. But you are able to get 10% off MSRP from this car for sure. All right, so I hope you like this. Let me know what do you think. Let me know which car you would personally get and why, and I'll catch you in the next video.